Imagine a single weapon released from high altitude, but instead of one explosion, it opens mid-air and scatters hundreds of smaller explosive devices across an enormous area. Within moments, an entire stretch of terrain can be covered with dangerous submunitions. These weapons are known as cluster munitions. For decades, they have appeared in conflicts across multiple continents, but they have also become one of the most debated and controversial weapons in the history of modern warfare. So controversial that more than 100 nations have formally agreed to prohibit them. But why? What separates cluster munitions from other conventional weapons, and why did so many governments decide they could no longer be justified? Let's understand, what are cluster munitions? Cluster munitions are weapons systems designed to disperse large numbers of smaller explosive submunitions across a wide area from a single delivery. When the outer container opens at altitude, it releases dozens or sometimes hundreds of individual bomblets across a broad zone below. These submunitions are designed to detonate on contact with the ground. They were originally developed to engage dispersed military targets, such as vehicle formations, troop concentrations, and equipment spread across open terrain. Their wide area coverage gave military planners the ability to affect multiple targets simultaneously with a single strike. However, that same characteristic, affecting such a large area at once, introduced consequences that extended far beyond the battlefield. Among the most serious concerns surrounding cluster munitions is the failure rate of individual submunitions. Not every bomblet detonates as intended upon reaching the ground. A significant percentage remain intact, effectively becoming undetected explosive hazards scattered across the affected area. These devices can remain dangerous for years or even decades after a conflict has ended. Communities returning to farmland, villages, and open areas following a war have encountered these remnants long after fighting concluded. It is this persistent post-conflict danger to civilian populations that became the central humanitarian argument driving international debate about these weapons. Through the late 20th century and early 21st century, humanitarian organizations, medical groups, and governments began documenting the real-world consequences of cluster munition use in conflict zones. Field reports consistently showed that unexploded submunitions remained embedded in agricultural land, residential neighborhoods, and public spaces long after military operations had concluded. Their small size and irregular appearance made them particularly difficult to locate and safely remove. As evidence accumulated, international pressure grew for a formal global response to the humanitarian challenges these weapons created. The International Agreement. In 2008, the Convention on Cluster Munitions was established as a binding international treaty. The agreement committed signatory nations to prohibiting the use, production, stockpiling, and transfer of cluster munitions. Countries that joined the convention also committed to clearing affected land, destroying existing stockpiles within defined timeframes, and providing assistance to communities impacted by unexploded remnants. More than 100 nations have since joined the agreement, representing one of the most significant humanitarian disarmament efforts of the modern era. However, several major military powers have not signed the treaty, meaning the global conversation about these weapons remains unresolved. Cluster munitions remain among the most actively debated subjects in contemporary military policy and international humanitarian law. Nations that have not joined the convention argue that these weapons retain legitimate military applications in certain operational contexts. Those supporting the ban maintain that no military advantage justifies the long-term humanitarian consequences documented across multiple conflict zones. The discussion sits at the intersection of military strategy, international law, and the protection of civilian populations, three areas where agreement is rarely straightforward. As new conflicts emerge and military technology continues to evolve, these conversations show no signs of reaching a simple conclusion. Cluster munitions offer a compelling example of how military technology can generate consequences that extend far beyond the battlefield, and how the international community sometimes responds by establishing new legal and humanitarian frameworks. From their development as wide-area battlefield systems to the global movement to restrict and eliminate them, their history reflects one of the most significant ongoing discussions in modern warfare policy. As military technology advances and the rules governing armed conflict continue to evolve, these conversations will only become more important. If you found this video informative, make sure to like and subscribe to Aviation History Hub. More military history and defense policy content is on the way. We'll see you in the next one.